folks, this is the Nutty Knife Guy, testing out the camera on my new Kindle Fire tablet. We'll see how this works. I'm hoping the sound will be better than on my camera, and if it is, I will be using the Kindle for my inside filming, and I'll still use the camera when I go outside. I'm not going outside today, though. We've got nice sun out, but there's a howling wind, and I think that if I went outside, all you would hear is the wind in the speaker. What we're going to talk about today is an article written by a man named Andrew Klavan. He's got a show on, I think, The Wire. And he was talking about the TV shows, particularly The Witcher, which I haven't watched, and how it portrays a woman in there that fights toe-to-toe, sword-to-sword with men and usually prevails. And he was talking about how that bugged him because it was totally unrealistic, and that if a woman fought a man with a sword and they were equally trained, how the woman would absolutely lose 100% of the time. I will link to hit that clip in my description. Now, I'm not God's gift to combat. I'm not an expert, but I have been an enthusiastic. We'll call myself an enthusiastic dabbler in edged weapons and martial arts and things like that. Of course, anybody who's watched this channel even once knows that I have a knife collection, and that I'm into historical weapons and how they were used and how to use them in the modern day for personal protection. And even a dabbler would realize that what he said about women and swords and fighting with swords was absolute crap. Now, I see his point to an extent, in that there is a lot of unrealistic portrayals of women fighting men in close quarters on an equal basis. But this is particularly true with empty-handed fighting. Empty-handed fighting. Most men, and these are generalities, there are exceptions to the rules, are stronger and more durable than their average woman. And if it comes to fighting at grappling range, at punching range, women are at a physical disadvantage. I know that may not be PC, but that's just the way it is. And if you look at these trans people that are men fighting in combat sports against women, you can see the results. A horribly injured woman in many cases. But it is. He's talking about swords, edged weapons. So this discussion is going to be about knives and swords and things like that. Weapons. What are weapons? They're equalizers. God created man, Sam Colt made him equal with the Colt revolver. Probably, we'll give about, say, 90% of the time, man versus woman in a close quarters fight, without weapons, the man is going to prevail. There are a lot of variables here, right? Is the woman more skilled? Does she have the element of surprise? Is she more committed to the fight? Does she just get lucky? All of these things affect that. Right? But still, you take weapons out of the equation, more often than not, men are going to have the advantage. But weapons change that. Of course, a gun changes that. At 50 feet away, a man and a woman has a gun. They each have guns. It's going to be who gets that first accurate shot in that wins. Right? But I think it's ridiculous to think that if unarmed man is up against a woman who has a knife, even if she isn't trained, that it balances things out. In order to use his superior strength, that man has to come close in and get in range of the blade. And that means he is possibly going to get cut. Once the weapon is involved, we have a level playing field, because it does not take a great deal of physical strength to put this through somebody's ribs, into their lungs, or heart, or other vital organs. It doesn't take a lot of physical strength to slash key muscles and ligaments and put limbs out of commission. Now, if a man and a woman each have a knife, it's still a pretty equal playing field. Strength may have something to do with it, especially with swords, because you can power through blocks. But edged weapon, when edged weapons become into play, and both sides have them, or really, edged weapon against blunt or anything like that. But when weapons come into play, we're going to focus on edged weapons. But when weapons come into play, it's a more equal playing field. That's why we have weapons. Back when we were cavemen, and I know the hardcore archaeologists and paleontologists and whatnot are freaking out when I use the term caveman, but it's vernacular. Right? When that caveman sharpened that piece of flint and said, "Hey, this will cut things," it leveled the playing field, at least a little bit, between man and the saber-toothed tiger, and man and the dire wolf, and man and the short-faced bear. Right? Because we had teeth. Now, we had claws. Man had teeth and claws of his own, and when he made that longer and he fashioned spears, it was even more of an equalizer. And eventually, man became the predator. He became the superior combatant if he was using tactics with his weapons, if he was using tactics, and especially if he was fighting as a team. But the point is, the weapon equalized things. It gave mankind teeth and claws to match the natural teeth and claws of things that were preying upon him. And that's why we still have weapons. Now, if you have a conflict between a man and a woman, once edged weapons are involved, agility, speed, and skill count as least as much as strength, and I would argue more so. Without edged weapons, a big, fat, 350-pound plus guy like me gets hold of a 98-pound woman, she's in a lot of trouble. Unless she gets lucky, or she's like, super ninja, secretly a super ninja woman or something like that. I grab hold of her, I body slam her to the ground, she's probably not going to recover from that. Or from any guy my size. Now, put edged weapons in there, and it's a whole different thing. In order to grab her, the big bruiser has to come in and risk getting stabbed or slashed. And if she's quick and she's agile, she can get in under his guard, right? Evade his thrusts, evade his attacks, and get in there and do damage. And like I said, it doesn't take a lot of strength to take out the ligaments behind the knee and he can't walk. It doesn't take a lot of strength to take out his carotid artery or get into his vital organs. So the notion that, and with swords, it's a little bit different. Strength plays a little bit more in with swords. But if the woman is quick and she's agile, and especially if she's skilled, she has a really good chance of beating a man with a sword, even if they are equally skilled and trained. Now, because if she especially if unarmored fighting, if you're talking about fencers and everything that use traditional armor and things like that, it's a little different. But still, if she's quick and she's agile and she's skilled, she'll get in the chinks of armor. Unarmored duels with swords or fighting with swords, right? If she's quick and she's agile and she's skilled, she can end that fight in a second right? One well-placed cut, one well-placed thrust, and it's over. So the idea that no woman could ever match a man with swords is crazy, and it is even more so, I think, with knives, because knife fighting is even more about agility, speed, and skill. Now, Mr. Klavan, I think, had a point, but he used the wrong example to prove his point. Take the weapons out of the equation, and Hollywood does give a false impression of what a woman, even a well-trained, experienced fighter of a woman, can accomplish. You know, movies like Atomic Blonde and the old TV series Alias, you know, has these, you know, women that are 120 pounds soaking wet, not just beating one guy who is also supposed to be equally well trained and 2 or 3 times her size, but battling their way through a whole bunch of male opponents, and coming out unscathed. And you know, this is a trend with TV and TV shows that even in close battle without weapons involved, women are equal to men. And I can understand why that bothers them, because that's a dangerous misconception that's being perpetrated on women. You know, a 120-pound woman is trying to trade punches with a 250-pound man. Barring the luck, and if they're equally skilled, that's not going to work out too well for the woman. It just won't. Right? But weapons change the equation. And the reason I decided to do a video about this, because Matt Easton over at Scholar Gladiatoria did it, and he's got a gazillion more followers than I have. Shadiversity, same thing. He did a video about this. But I think I had to do it too, because there's so many myths out there about self-protection, especially about women. Right? There are people out there, you know, well, you know, if you just kick a man in the nuts, right? Well, the fight's over. He's going to make this really funny face, and he's going to gurgle a little bit, and he's going to go down, and it's over. Not necessarily. You know, if a man is determined, and committed to the fight, committed to do that woman harm, then he can fight through that pain. And it's the same thing with, you know, and it's a misconception about that a right hook from a 98-pound woman is going to have the same effect on a man as a right hook from a 250-pound man. No. Now, there are exceptions. There are women that are out there that are amazingly skilled and can put bigger people down. But that's to say that they're not as skilled, and she has luck, and she has the element of surprise, and maybe is just lucky. But even a trained woman, chances are she is going to have to hit a man more times, or at least be much more accurate and get him in a place that really matters to put him down, because she simply is not going to generate the same kind of power that a man will. It's anatomy, it's physics. But you put a weapon in there, and strength becomes much, much less of a factor. Just the way it is, folks. So, like I said, I think that Mr. Klavan had the wrong execution of the right idea. I think dispelling the idea that women and men are equal in close combat is a correct thing to do. We don't want women out there looking at TV and then going out and taking a self-defense course and thinking they are capable of an even match with a man twice their size, or even a woman twice their size when it comes to just sheer physical strength. In close quarters, physical strength and size are a huge advantage in unarmed combat. And convincing people with unreal and convincing people otherwise in on TV with TV shows and movies is a dangerous thing. Now, people say, well, yeah, I mean, it's TV, it's entertainment and everything, but the thing of it is, even if you're consciously watching this, if you're watching this and you're consciously saying, well, that's very unrealistic, you're seeing this all the time, and it becomes normal on television. And it becomes normal to a part of your brain, too, because you're not always thinking. It's kind of a subliminal programming, in my humble opinion, that women are capable of doing everything a man can do, and then men can do everything a woman can do equally well. No, there are differences in brain chemistry. There are differences in physical anatomy. There are just differences between men and women, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. There are some things men are more suited for. There are some things women are most suited for. And this false image of, Charlize Theron being able to, wade her way hand to hand through a bunch of muscle men is absurd and potentially dangerous. If people are kind of conditioned to think that can happen on a regular basis. And there are instructors out there that will tell you, well, that size and strength don't matter. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And again, but the point of this video is that it matters a lot less when this comes into effect, or a tire iron comes into effect. Certainly if a gun comes into effect. But swords, knives, any kind of weapon, that's what it's about. It's evening the playing field. A woman picks up a tire iron in a fight. If the man doesn't have a weapon, that gives a woman an advantage in reach, and it greatly increases her striking power, and it greatly increases her chances of victory in that conflict. So I think the idea of, if you're a woman out there and you're serious about personal protection, right, and you want to get training, that's great, but make sure it's realistic training, right? Don't buy the fact that any kind of training, you're a black belt in martial art X, doesn't make you the equal in strength and size to a larger male opponent. It may help you overcome your deficits in those areas, right? So I wholeheartedly tell you to go train, but be careful who you get your training from and how you're trained, and make sure and be realistic about your own capabilities. And I think that's, everybody when it comes to that kind of training. Be realistic about your own capabilities if you're a man or a woman, but you have to realistically assess. I weigh 120 pounds. He weighs 200 pounds. Right? Right? He is stronger than me. He's going to, and just the sheer weight he can use to overwhelm me. I have to be aware of that and train to overcome that. But training sometimes just won't be enough. So pepper spray, baton, whatever's legal in your area. Ladies, weapons. If you feel the need to protect yourself, you're going to have, it's going to be against an opponent that feels he has some sort of advantage in strength, in weight, in numbers. You're going to carry a weapon for the same reason men carry weapons, because they realize their own limitations. But please don't get the idea that you can meet strength on strength, power for power to a man, or even, like I said, even a woman that is much larger than you. It doesn't work that way. So this business of women never being able to overcome a man with a sword is stupid. It shows a tremendous amount of ignorance on the man's part. But the overall point is, and we're, like I said, I'm going to keep showing my trusty dusty Ontario SP6 here, because it was one of the collection was my handiest when I sat down to do this. This makes strength much less relevant. And the idea that a woman can't prevail against a man in a knife fight or a sword fight, well, is stupid. But I think he just chose the wrong example to make his point. And also, he spoke in absolutes. And there, in any kind of personal defense situation, personal protection situation, or any kind of combat situation, there are no absolutes. A woman can just get lucky. She can go for a shin kick and catch him at just the right angle, just the right time, and break his leg and end the fight. Right? Right? Those keys, she might be able, she might get a finger in an eye to the point and hurt him bad enough that he breaks off. That kick to the nuts might bring him down like it does on the TV. There's always X factors. But weapons equalize things. Right? You can't get around the X factor, don't get me wrong. But the reason and I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I'm trying to get this point across, is weapons exist to equal the playing field. Right? So you take, and I've just really gotten into swords in the last couple of years. Been into knives forever, but I've really only gotten into swords in the last, say, 5 years. But I've done enough work with them to know that if you get a woman who is quick, who is agile, and even if she doesn't have any real training, if she just has those qualities, she's a real threat to a man, even if he has a sword too. And a sword is a fight stopper. If you take a European long sword or a katana, right, just about anything, any kind of a hit, you take it here, it slices through the bicep, that arm's over. That arm's done. It's not going to work anymore. Right? And of course, a cut in the neck or anything like it, the fight's over. It's seconds and inches with those kind of weapons. Right? And in that context, it is a very level playing field. If you're looking at man and woman with a sword, or men and women both have knives, or any mix of melee weapons, a tire iron across the arm is going to take out the arm. It's going to be really hard to find broken ribs. And when it comes to edge weapons, it's even more so, because the fight can end with one thrust, one cut. And strength and size really don't do anything to mitigate that fact. Okay? So that's pretty much it for this week. Next week, if I can get outside and when the weather is not too atrocious, I will be testing a budget camp knife, a $10 job from, I got a Tractor Supply. But until then, remember to draw your knives only in just purpose, sheathe them only in honor, only with honor. And remember that without knives, life would be dull and pointless. Please like, share, subscribe. That would help me out tremendously. And I will see you next week.